The moon called Krenos was a dead place. Gray rocks stretched as far as anyone could see. Lightning storms crashed across the sky every few hours, making the air smell like burned metal. Captain Marcus Bennett stood on the wall of mining station Theta 7 and watched the horizon through his tactical display. The sun was coming up. That meant the enemy would attack soon. Marcus was 38 years old and had been a soldier for 15 years. His face had scars from old battles. His hands were steady. His eyes were tired but sharp. He had fought in 7 different wars across 4 different planets. This war on Krenos had been going on for 3 years now. Nobody was winning. Sergeant Diana Ortega walked up beside him. She was his second in command and his best friend. Diana had special eyes that could see in the dark and zoom in like a camera. She was the best shot in the whole platoon. "They'll come at dawn," Diana said. "Just like the intelligence report said." Marcus nodded. "How many civilians in the shelter?" 237. Mostly miners and their families. Diana looked at him. "We can hold them, Marcus. The defenses are solid." Marcus wanted to believe her. The mining station had good walls and strong weapons. His platoon had 42 soldiers. 28 were human. The rest were aliens who had joined the human military. One of them was Takara, a Quellan engineer who breathed methane instead of oxygen and had to wear a special suit all the time. The enemy was called the Vexari Collective. They looked like giant insects with hard shells and too many legs. They were smart and organized. Their leader here on Krenos was Lieutenant Commander Zalteth, who had never lost a battle. Until today, maybe. Private Kyle Hutchinson ran up to them. He was young, only 22, and this was his second tour of duty. Kyle was a medic. He carried medical supplies instead of extra ammunition. His hands shook a little as he gave Marcus a status report. "Medical bay is ready, sir. We have supplies for about 50 casualties. Maybe more if we stretch it." "Good work, Kyle." Marcus put a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Stay close to the command post during the fight. We'll need you." Kyle nodded and ran back to his position. Marcus watched him go and remembered being that young once, back when he still thought wars could be won cleanly without too much blood. "Contacts," someone shouted over the radio. "Eastern perimeter. Multiple signatures." Marcus brought up his tactical display. Red dots appeared on his screen. Lots of them. More than intelligence had predicted. The Vexari were coming in force. "All units, battle stations," Marcus said into his radio. His voice was calm. "Hold fire until they're in range. Make every shot count." The first Vexari soldiers appeared over the ridge. They moved fast, their 6 legs carrying them across the rough ground like water flowing downhill. Their armor was dark blue and shiny. They carried plasma rifles that glowed with green energy. "Fire," Marcus ordered. The battle began with a sound like thunder. Human rifles cracked. Plasma bolts screamed through the air. Explosions threw dirt and rocks high into the sky. The smell of burning filled Marcus's nose. Diana was next to him, her rifle making precise shots. Every time she pulled the trigger, a Vexari soldier fell. Takara was at her engineering station, controlling automated gun turrets and keeping the shields running. The other soldiers held their positions and fired in disciplined bursts. For 20 minutes, the defense held perfectly. The Vexari couldn't get close to the walls. Bodies piled up in front of the station. Marcus started to think they might actually win this. Then everything went wrong. A group of Vexari shock troops came from the east where the defenses were weakest. They wore heavy-powered armor that made them twice as big as normal soldiers. Their plasma cannons tore through the wall like it was paper. "Eastern wall is breached," someone screamed over the radio. "They're coming through!" Marcus ran toward the breach. Diana and 5 other soldiers followed him. They had to stop the Vexari from getting inside. If the enemy reached the civilian shelter, everyone would die. He rounded a corner and came face to face with a Vexari shock trooper. The alien was enormous in its powered armor. Its plasma cannon was pointed right at Marcus. Marcus dove to the side. He wasn't fast enough. The plasma bolt hit him square in the chest. The impact threw him backward. He felt his armor melt, felt his skin burn, felt something inside him break in ways that couldn't be fixed. He hit the ground hard. The pain was unbelievable. It felt like his whole chest was on fire. He couldn't breathe right. Something warm and wet was spreading across his uniform. Blood. His blood. Diana shot the Vexari trooper 3 times in the head. The alien fell. She ran to Marcus and dropped to her knees beside him. "Kyle!" She screamed into her radio. Medic now. Kyle appeared seconds later. His face went white when he saw Marcus's wound. The young medic had been trained well. He knew what different injuries looked like. He knew what could be fixed and what couldn't. This couldn't be fixed. The plasma bolt had burned a hole through Marcus's chest the size of a fist. Kyle could see burned organs inside the wound. Blood was everywhere. By every rule of medicine, Marcus should already be dead. His heart should have stopped. His brain should have shut down from shock. But Marcus's eyes were still open. They were focused, clear. Give me a status report, Marcus said. His voice was weak but steady. Diana stared at him. Marcus, we need to get you to medical... Status report, Sergeant. Marcus tried to sit up. Kyle pushed him back down, but not too hard. The medic was afraid that any pressure might kill the captain instantly. Eastern wall is breached, Diana said, her voice shaking. We killed the shock troops, but more are coming. Northern wall is holding. Western wall has heavy contact. We've lost 8 soldiers, Marcus nodded. Each breath looked painful. Blood came from his mouth when he spoke. Tell Takara to seal the breach with the emergency barriers. Move 3rd Squad to reinforce the western wall. 2nd Squad pulls back to protect the civilian shelter. Sir, you're dying, Kyle whispered. You need surgery. I can't fix this. Nobody can fix this. Marcus looked at the young medic. Then patch me up enough to keep me moving. I'm not done yet. Kyle's hands were shaking so hard he could barely open his medical kit. He pulled out a can of emergency sealant, the kind they used for hull breaches on spaceships. It would burn like hell, but it would stop some of the bleeding. This is going to hurt, Kyle warned. Everything hurts, Marcus said. Do it. Kyle sprayed the sealant directly into the wound. The chemical foam expanded and hardened, covering the exposed organs and burned flesh. Marcus's jaw clenched tight, but he didn't scream. Didn't even make a sound. Diana was crying. She had seen a lot of death in her 7 years serving with Marcus, but this was different. This was wrong. People didn't survive wounds like this. They couldn't. The human body had limits, and those limits had been exceeded. Help me up, Marcus said. Marcus. No, Diana started to say. That's an order. Sergeant. Diana and Kyle grabbed his arms and pulled him to his feet. Marcus swayed but didn't fall. He picked up his rifle from where it had fallen. The weapon felt heavy, heavier than it should. Everything felt distant and strange, like he was watching himself from far away. But he could still think. Could still command. Could still fight. Diana, you have tactical command, Marcus said. I'll coordinate overall defense. Kyle stays with me. They moved back to the command post. Every step was agony for Marcus. His vision kept going blurry. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to keep moving, one foot in front of the other. At the command post, Takara was working on her engineering controls. When she saw Marcus, all 4 of her eye stalks went rigid with shock. Quellen didn't understand violence the way humans did. In her culture, when someone was injured badly, they accepted death with grace. They didn't keep fighting. Captain Bennett. Takara's translator made her voice sound like wind chimes. Your injuries. You should not be standing. Emergency barriers, Marcus said, ignoring her concern. Can you deploy them at the eastern breach? Takara stared at him for another moment, then turned back to her controls. Her tentacle-like fingers moved across the display. Barriers deploying now. It will hold for 30 minutes. Maybe less if they focus fire on it. Good enough, Marcus said. He opened a channel to all units. All squads, this is Bennett. Eastern breach is sealed temporarily. Western wall, I need you to hold for 15 more minutes. Northern wall, prepare to receive reinforcements. Anyone who can be spared from their position, move to assist the western defense. The battle continued. Marcus stayed at the command post, watching his tactical display and giving orders. Blood dripped steadily from his wound despite the sealant. Kyle injected him with stimulants to keep him conscious and coagulants to slow the bleeding. Nothing was working like it should. 5 kilometers away in the Vexari command post, Lieutenant Commander Zalteth watched the battle through tactical sensors. The human defenses were holding better than predicted. That was annoying but not unexpected. Humans were stubborn. Then one of Zalteth's officers called out an alarm. Commander, the human leader. Look at the bioscan. Zalteth examined the data. The sensors showed Captain Marcus Bennett still commanding the defense. That was normal. But the medical scan showed something impossible. The human had a massive chest wound. Catastrophic damage to vital organs. Blood loss that should have caused death. The next hour felt like a lifetime. Marcus stood at the command post, blood soaking through his uniform. His chest burned with every breath. The sealant Kyle had sprayed into his wound was the only thing keeping his insides from spilling out. It wasn't enough. It couldn't be enough. Yet somehow Marcus kept standing. Diana coordinated the tactical response while Marcus maintained overall command. She would glance at him every few seconds, expecting him to collapse. Each time he was still there. Still breathing. Still fighting. Western Wall is holding, Diana reported, her voice tight with emotion. The reinforcements arrived in time. We've pushed them back about 50 meters, Marcus nodded. The movement made his vision swim with black spots. Good. Tell them to hold that position. Don't chase the Vixari. Let them come to us. Kyle was always within arm's reach, his medical scanner constantly checking Marcus's vital signs. The readings made no sense. Heart rate was irregular and weak. Blood pressure was critically low. Oxygen levels in the blood were dropping. By every medical standard Kyle had learned, Marcus should have been dead 10 minutes ago. Sir, please, Kyle begged quietly. You need surgery. Real surgery. If we don't get you to medical bay right now. If I go to medical bay, who commands the defense? Marcus asked. His voice was getting weaker, barely more than a whisper. Diana can handle tactics, but the soldiers need to see their captain. They need to know I haven't abandoned them. You're going to die, Kyle said, tears running down his face. Probably, Marcus agreed. But not yet. Not until this battle is over. Not until my people are safe. Takara watched this exchange from her engineering station. She had served with humans for 2 years now, but she would never understand them. In Quellan society, death was accepted as natural. Fighting against the inevitable was seen as foolish, even disrespectful to the universe's order. But humans were different. They came from Earth, a planet the galaxy classified as a death world. High gravity, extreme weather, dangerous predators, and deadly diseases. Only the most aggressive, most stubborn species could survive there. And humanity had not just survived. They had conquered their world and then reached for the stars. Takara had read reports about human biology. Their bodies produced chemicals called adrenaline and endorphins during stress. These chemicals could block pain and increase strength temporarily. But the captain's wound was beyond anything these chemicals should overcome. His injury was fatal, final, absolute, yet he refused to die. Emergency broadcast from Vexari Command, one of the communications officers announced. They want to speak with Captain Bennett directly. Diana looked at Marcus. It might be a surrender offer. Or a trick, Marcus said. Put them through. The screen flickered to life. Lieutenant Commander Zaltith appeared. The Vexari officer looked like a massive mantis with a triangular head and compound eyes that glittered like jewels. Zaltith's mandibles clicked together in what might have been surprise. Captain Bennett, Zaltith said through their translator, our sensors indicate you have sustained a mortal injury. Yet you continue to command. This is unexpected. Marcus leaned against the command console, using it to stay upright. Commander Zaltith, did you call to discuss my health, or did you have something important to say? Zaltith's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. I called to offer you terms of surrender. Your position is untenable. Your soldiers are outnumbered. And you are dying. There is no logical reason to continue this battle. I don't need a logical reason, Marcus said. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. He wiped it away with the back of his hand. I have 237 civilians in the shelter below this station. I have 34 soldiers still fighting. As long as they need me, I'll keep standing. You should be dead, Zaltith said. It wasn't an insult. It was a statement of confusion. By every calculation, by every medical standard, you should have expired 17 minutes ago. How are you still conscious? Marcus smiled. It was a tired, painful smile, because I'm human. We're stubborn like that. This defies logic. Logic is overrated, Marcus replied. My soldiers don't need logic. They need hope. They need to see that their captain hasn't given up. So I won't give up. Not until they're safe. Not until this battle is won. Not until my last breath leaves my body. Zaltith was silent for a long moment. Then the screen went dark. The Vexari commander had ended the call without another word. What was that about? Diana asked. Fear, Marcus said quietly. Zaltith is afraid. Not of our weapons or our tactics. Afraid of what I represent, which is An enemy that refuses to quit. An enemy that ignores wounds that should kill them. An enemy that fights on pure willpower alone. Marcus coughed and blood spattered on the console. Kyle rushed forward with a cloth to wipe it away. That's terrifying to a species that values logic and calculation. The battle continued. The Vexari launched 3 more assaults over the next 2 hours. Each time the human defenders held their ground. Each time Marcus was there, giving orders, encouraging his soldiers, refusing to fall. Word spread among the defenders about what had happened to their captain. The soldiers saw him standing at the command post, saw the massive wound in his chest, saw the blood. They knew he should be dead. And seeing him still fighting gave them strength they didn't know they had. A private named Angela Martinez was pinned down by enemy fire on the northern wall. She was out of ammunition and had a broken arm. She could have retreated, should have retreated. But she thought about Captain Bennett, still standing with a hole in his chest. If he could keep fighting, so could she. Angela grabbed a fallen Vexari plasma rifle and used it to drive back the enemy assault. Corporal Peter Zhao was wounded in the leg and struggling to reach the medical bay. He saw Marcus on a monitor, blood-soaked but upright, still commanding. Peter stopped trying to reach medical. He picked up a rifle and returned to his position. If the captain wouldn't quit, neither would he. All across the mining station, similar stories played out. Soldiers who were exhausted found new energy. Soldiers who were afraid found new courage, all because one man refused to accept death. In the Vexari command post, Zalteth watched the tactical display with growing unease. The human defenses should have broken by now. The death of their commander should have shattered their morale. Instead, the opposite was happening. The humans were fighting harder than before. One of Zalteth's officers approached. "Commander, we could deploy the heavy artillery. Turn the entire station to rubble." "No," Zalteth said. "That would destroy the mining equipment we came here to capture. And it would make martyrs of the humans. This Captain Bennett has already become a symbol. If we kill him with overwhelming force, that symbol becomes a legend. Then what do we do?" Zalteth didn't have an answer. For the first time in a long military career, the Vexari commander faced a problem that couldn't be solved with tactics or firepower. How did you fight an enemy that refused to die? How did you break the spirit of soldiers who drew strength from their commander's impossible survival? Back at mining station Theta 7, Marcus was losing his battle against death. His vision was getting darker. His hands were numb. His legs felt like they were made of water. Kyle had injected him with every stimulant in the medical kit. "Nothing was working anymore, Marcus," Diana said softly. She had tears streaming down her face. "Please, let us take you to medical." "You've done enough. More than enough." Marcus looked at the tactical display. The Vexari attacks were getting weaker, less organized. The enemy was pulling back. "How long until the relief force arrives?" 30 minutes, Diana said. "Then I stay here for 30 more minutes. You'll die." "Maybe," Marcus said, "but not before my job is done." 23 minutes later, Marcus collapsed. His legs finally gave out. He fell to his knees, then forward onto his hands. Blood pooled beneath him. Kyle and Diana caught him before he hit the ground completely. "No, no, no," Kyle was saying, checking vitals, applying pressure to the wound. "Stay with me, sir." "Stay with me." Marcus's eyes were still open, still aware. He looked at Diana, the defense. "Holding," Diana said through her tears. "The Vexari are retreating." "We won, Marcus. We won," Marcus smiled. Then his eyes closed. "No pulse," Kyle shouted. "I'm starting CPR." The young medic began chest compressions, pushing down hard and fast on Marcus's sternum. Each compression sent more blood flowing from the wound. It should have been hopeless. It was hopeless. But Kyle had learned something today. Humans didn't accept hopeless. Humans fought anyway. After 30 seconds of CPR, Marcus gasped. His eyes fluttered open. His heart started beating again, weak and irregular, but beating. "Impossible," Takara whispered from her station. "This is impossible." "He's human," Diana said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Impossible is what they do." The relief force arrived 7 minutes later. Medical personnel rushed Marcus to the emergency surgical bay. The doctors gave him a 10% chance of survival. His wound was too severe. He had lost too much blood. He had been clinically dead for 30 seconds, but Marcus Bennett had already survived 4 hours with a fatal wound. He had commanded a successful defense while dying. He had refused to accept death until his mission was complete. 10% chance of survival seemed almost generous. The story spread like wildfire. Within hours, every human military unit in the sector had heard about Captain Marcus Bennett. Within days, the story reached civilian news networks. Within a week, the entire galaxy was talking about the human who refused to die. The facts were clear and undeniable. Marcus had taken a plasma bolt directly to the chest. The wound destroyed vital organs and should have killed him in minutes. Instead, he commanded a successful defense for 4 hours. He died once and came back. Then he survived surgery that doctors said was impossible. Human propaganda departments turned Marcus into a hero. Posters showed him standing tall with his wound visible, rifle in hand defending the station. The slogan was simple but powerful. A human doesn't quit. A human doesn't surrender. A human fights until the last breath, and even death has to wait its turn. Diana Ortega was interviewed by military journalists. She told them everything she had witnessed. He should have been dead before he hit the ground, she said. But Marcus just looked at me and asked for a status report. Like having a hole in his chest was a minor inconvenience. That's when I understood what it really means to be human. Medic Kyle Hutchinson gave his testimony to the Military Medical Board. I've treated hundreds of combat casualties, he explained. I know what fatal looks like. Captain Bennett's injury was beyond fatal. It was impossible that he remained conscious. It was impossible that he survived the first 5 minutes. It was impossible that he kept commanding for 4 hours. But he did all of it anyway. Human biology has limits, but apparently willpower doesn't. The medical board reviewed all the data, bioscan recordings, blood analysis, surgical reports. Everything confirmed the story. They published a paper titled Extreme Survival Response in Human Combat Personnel. It became required reading in every xenobiology course in human space. Specialist Takara returned to Quellan space to brief her government. The Quellan were peaceful traders, not warriors. They had allied with humans for economic reasons and mutual protection. But they had never fully understood their human partners until now. Takara stood before the Quellan Council and told them what she had witnessed. Captain Bennett fought for 4 hours with an injury that would kill any Quellan instantly, she said. He commanded his soldiers while dying. When his heart stopped, a young medic brought him back. This is not an isolated case. This is what humans are capable of when they refuse to surrender. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One elder spoke. This troubles us. Such aggression, such refusal to accept natural order. Is this what we have allied ourselves with? A species that fights against death itself? Not aggression, Takara corrected. Determination. Captain Bennett did not fight because he enjoyed violence. He fought because 200 civilians depended on him. He fought because surrender meant their deaths. Humans are not savage. They are protective. They are loyal. And they will endure impossible pain to protect those they care about. The council debated for hours. In the end, they decided to maintain the alliance with humanity. But they also updated their military protocols. Any Quellan officer commanding human soldiers had to complete special training about human combat psychology and survival capabilities. The Vexari Collective had a different reaction. They tried to dismiss the story as propaganda at first, human lies designed to scare their enemies. But too many witnesses existed. The Vexari's own tactical sensors had recorded everything. Their officers had watched Marcus Bennett die and then refused to stay dead. Lieutenant Commander Zalteth was called before a military tribunal. The other Vexari commanders wanted answers. Why had Zalteth withdrawn from mining station Theta 7? Why abandon a battle that tactical analysis said was winnable? Zalteth stood in the center of the tribunal chamber. The officer's mandibles were steady, voice calm. I withdrew because the human commander demonstrated capabilities that exceed our tactical models. He sustained a fatal wound and continued to command effectively for 4 hours. This created a force multiplier effect on his soldiers' morale that our projections did not account for. One wounded human, a tribunal member said dismissively. You retreated because of one wounded human? I retreated because that one wounded human proved that our understanding of humanity is incomplete, Zalteth replied. We have been fighting this war based on the assumption that humans are similar to other species. They are not. They come from a death world. They evolved to survive conditions that would kill most galactic species. And when we cornered them, when we should have won, they simply refused to accept defeat. The tribunal reviewed the tactical recordings. They watched Marcus Bennett take the plasma bolt. Watched him stand up afterward. Watched him command for 4 hours while blood poured from his chest. Watched him die and then return to life. The tribunal chamber fell silent. Finally, the lead commander spoke. This changes our strategic assessment. Lieutenant Commander Zalteth showed wisdom in withdrawing. We recommend immediate research into human biology and combat psychology. We also recommend opening diplomatic channels to discuss peace negotiations. Zalteth was not only cleared of wrongdoing, but promoted. The officer was put in charge of a new research division, focused on understanding human capabilities. It was a position Zalteth had never wanted, but now realized was necessary. Meanwhile, at a military hospital on the human colony world of New Perth, Marcus Bennett slowly recovered. The surgery had taken 16 hours. The doctors had to replace 3 organs with synthetic versions. They installed a mesh framework around his ribs to support the damaged chest structure. They gave him enough blood transfusions to fill 3 people, and still he survived. Diana visited him every day. She brought reports from the platoon, updates on the war, messages from soldiers who wanted to thank him. She also brought entertainment. Movies, books, music, anything to keep him occupied during the long recovery. You're famous now, Diana said one day, sitting beside his hospital bed. There are posters of you on every military base in the sector. Children wear action figures that look like you. You've become a legend, Marcus grimaced. I didn't do anything special. I just did my job. You died and came back to life to finish your job, Diana pointed out. That's a bit more than the job description usually requires. I had good people around me. You handled the tactics perfectly. Kyle kept me alive long enough for the surgeons to work their magic. Takara kept the shields running. It was a team effort. It was a team effort led by a man who refused to die, Diana said softly. Don't diminish what you did, Marcus. You gave everyone hope. You showed the entire galaxy what humans are capable of. That matters. Kyle Hutchinson visited too. The young medic had been promoted and given a commendation for his actions during the battle. He was teaching now, training other combat medics. His first lesson to every new class was simple. Never give up on a human patient. Never assume they're beyond saving. Human biology combined with human willpower can achieve miracles. You changed how we practice medicine, Kyle told Marcus. The military medical corps has updated all their protocols because of you. We're saving lives now that we would have given up on before. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He had just been trying to protect his people. He hadn't meant to change anything. But he was learning that actions had consequences beyond what anyone could predict. 3 weeks after the battle, Marcus was finally strong enough to watch the tactical recordings. Diana brought them on a datapad. She warned him that they were difficult to watch. She wasn't wrong. Marcus saw himself take the plasma bolt, saw himself fall, saw the wound that should have killed him. Then he watched himself stand up and keep fighting. From an outside perspective, it looked even more impossible than it had felt. He looked like a walking corpse covered in blood, swaying on his feet. But his voice on the recordings was steady. His orders were clear. He had been dying, but he had still been in command. How did I do that? Marcus asked quietly. Diana shook her head. The doctors can't explain it. Adrenaline, shock response, and willpower. But those things alone shouldn't be enough. They think it's something deeper. Something about being human. About coming from Earth. Earth. The Deathworld. Marcus thought about his home planet. The deadly storms, the dangerous wildlife. The diseases that had killed billions before humanity developed medicine. His ancestors had survived all of that. They had been hunted by predators with teeth and claws. They had faced starvation, freezing cold, burning heat. And they had survived not by being the strongest or the fastest, but by refusing to quit. Maybe that was the answer. Maybe humans survived impossible situations because their entire evolutionary history was surviving impossible situations. Maybe refusing to die was written into their DNA. The Vexari want peace talks, Diana said, changing the subject. Zalteth convinced their high command that continuing the war is pointless. They're afraid of you, Marcus. Afraid of what you represent. They should be afraid of all of us, Marcus said. I'm not special. Any human soldier would have done the same thing in my position. I'm not sure that's true, Diana replied. But I think the Vexari believe it. And that's what matters. They think every human is potentially another Marcus Bennett. Another soldier who will keep fighting no matter what. 6 months passed since the battle at Mining Station Theta 7. The galaxy had changed in ways both large and small. The war between humans and the Vexari collective was winding down. Peace negotiations were progressing well. Trade routes that had been closed for years were reopening. And Captain Marcus Bennett, now promoted to Major, was about to return to active combat duty. The doctors had advised against it. His chest still hurt sometimes, especially when the weather changed. The synthetic organs functioned well, but weren't quite the same as the real thing. He would never be 100% again. But he was close enough, and that was all Marcus needed. His new assignment was command of a battalion. 400 soldiers across 6 companies. It was a significant promotion and a vote of confidence from high command. But Marcus suspected the real reason for his assignment. The military wanted him visible. They wanted the legend of Marcus Bennett out there, inspiring troops and intimidating enemies. Diana Ortega requested transfer to serve as his executive officer. She had done well with her own company, but she wanted to work with Marcus again. He approved the transfer immediately. Having Diana by his side felt right. She knew how he thought, how he commanded. They were a good team. Kyle Hutchinson had also transferred to the battalion. He was now Lieutenant Hutchinson, head of the medical corps. He had written a book about combat medicine that was required reading in every medical school. The book's introduction started with a simple statement. I once watched a man fight for 4 hours with a fatal wound. That taught me that human limits are negotiable. Even Takara had rejoined them. The Quellan engineer had been assigned to an embassy position after her testimony to the Quellan Council. But she missed fieldwork and requested reassignment to Marcus's battalion. When asked why, she said simply that she wanted to learn more about how humans thought and fought. There was no better place to learn than beside Major Bennett. The battalion's first mission was to secure a series of listening posts along the human-Vexari border. It was supposed to be quiet work. The peace talks were going well. Nobody expected any real fighting. But Marcus prepared his soldiers as if they were going into the worst battle of their lives. He had learned a long time ago that expecting the best was how people died. The battalion arrived at their area of operations without incident. They set up defensive positions and began their patrols. The listening posts were old and needed repairs, so Takara stayed busy. Kyle organized the medical facilities and trained the battalion medics. Diana coordinated with the company commanders, and Marcus watched over it all, making sure his people were ready for anything. On the 4th day, they received an emergency transmission. A diplomatic convoy carrying both human and Vexari peace delegates had been attacked. The convoy was captured, the delegates taken hostage. Initial reports suggested Vexari hardliners who opposed the peace process were responsible. Marcus's battalion was the closest military unit. High Command ordered them to mount a rescue operation. Time was critical. The hostages would likely be executed within 24 hours as a message to both governments. Diana pulled up tactical maps. The convoy was taken to an old mining facility about 80 kilometers from here. Good defensive position. High walls, limited approaches. Intel suggests at least 200 hostiles. We have 400, Marcus said. Good odds. The terrain favors the defenders, Diana pointed out. A direct assault would be costly. Marcus studied the maps. He had been trained in tactical assault, hostage rescue, and siege warfare. This situation required all three. We split into 3 groups. Alpha and Bravo companies hit the main gate hard. That draws their attention. Charlie and Delta companies infiltrate from the west where the walls are weakest. Echo and Foxtrot companies hold in reserve to exploit any opening. What about you? Diana asked. I'll be with the infiltration teams. Once we're inside, we move fast to the hostage location, extract them and fall back to the rally point. The plan was solid. Risky, but solid. They moved out within the hour. The battalion traveled fast using the terrain for cover. They arrived at the mining facility just after sunset. Perfect timing. The darkness would help the infiltration teams. Alpha and Bravo companies opened fire on the main gate right on schedule. The noise was tremendous. Plasma bolts and explosions lit up the night. The defenders rushed to meet the threat just as Marcus had predicted. While they were focused on the main gate, Charlie and Delta companies moved toward the western wall. Marcus led the infiltration team personally. They used climbing gear to scale the wall in silence. No alarms went off. No guards spotted them. They were inside within minutes. Diana was right beside him, her enhanced eyes scanning for threats in the darkness. They moved through the facility like ghosts, taking out sentries silently, avoiding patrols, making their way deeper into the complex. Intel had placed the hostages in a central building that used to be the facility's administrative center. That's where Marcus led his team. They found the hostages exactly where Intel said they would be. 12 delegates, both human and Vexari, held in a large room guarded by 6 heavily armed soldiers. Marcus signaled his team. They breached the room in perfect coordination. The guards went down in seconds without firing a shot. One of the hostages was Lieutenant Commander Zalteth. The Vexari officer recognized Marcus immediately despite the tactical gear and low light. Zalteth's mandibles clicked in what might have been surprise or respect. "Captain Bennett," Zalteth said, "I should have known you would come." "Major Bennett now," Marcus replied. "Can you walk, Commander?" "I am uninjured," Zalteth confirmed, "as are the other delegates. Your timing is fortunate. They plan to execute us at dawn." "Then we're leaving now," Marcus said. "Stay close and stay quiet. My people will get you out safely." The extraction should have been simple. Get the hostages to the western wall, lower them down with ropes, and escape into the darkness. But plans never survived contact with the enemy. An alarm went off as they were moving through the facility. Someone had found the unconscious guards. "Move fast," Marcus ordered. "Get them to the extraction point." Enemy soldiers appeared from every direction. Marcus's team fought a running battle through the facility. They protected the delegates, taking fire meant for the civilians and covering the retreat. 3 soldiers went down wounded. Kyle appeared from somewhere and started treating them even as plasma bolts flew overhead. They reached the western wall. The delegates started climbing down the ropes. Marcus and his team held the position, laying down suppressing fire to keep the enemy at bay. Diana was shooting with mechanical precision, each shot taking down a threat. The infiltration team was doing exactly what they had been trained to do. Then Marcus saw the enemy commander, a large Vexari in ornate armor directing troops with sharp clicks and gestures. This was the hardliner who had ordered the kidnapping, the one trying to sabotage the peace. If that commander escaped, they would just try again. Marcus made a decision. "Diana, get the delegates out. I'm going after the commander." Marcus, "No. That's not the mission." "The mission is to secure peace," Marcus replied. "That means stopping the people who want war, trust me." Before Diana could argue further, Marcus moved. He ran straight toward the enemy commander, firing as he went. It was insane, suicidal, but it was also effective. The enemy forces scattered in confusion, unable to understand why a human soldier was charging directly at their leader. Marcus reached the commander and they fought hand to hand. The Vexari was strong and fast, but Marcus had experience and desperation. They struggled for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then Marcus got his rifle up and fired point blank into the commander's chest. The Vexari fell. The enemy forces stopped fighting. Without their commander, they lost coordination. Marcus shouted at them in basic Vexari trade language. "Peace talks. The war is ending. Your commander tried to sabotage it. Don't die for someone who would destroy the future." The enemy soldiers hesitated. Some lowered their weapons. Others looked uncertain. Marcus kept talking, kept appealing to their reason. And slowly, the fighting stopped. Not because humans had won militarily, but because Marcus had given them a reason to stop. Diana and the infiltration team returned to pull Marcus out. The delegates were safe. The mission was complete. And surprisingly, nobody else had died. The enemy soldiers had surrendered once their commander fell, and Marcus explained what was really happening. Back at base, Zalteth requested a private meeting with Marcus. They sat in Marcus's command tent, 2 officers who had been enemies and were now something like colleagues. "You saved my life today," Zalteth said. "I want to thank you." Just doing my job, Marcus replied. No, Zaltith said firmly. It was more than duty. You risked your life to capture the enemy commander when you could have simply escaped. You spoke to hostile soldiers about peace instead of killing them. You acted not as a warrior but as a peacemaker. That takes a different kind of courage. Marcus was quiet for a moment. At mining station Theta 7, I learned that surviving is sometimes about more than fighting. It's about having something worth surviving for. Peace is worth surviving for, worth fighting for, worth risking everything for. Zaltith's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. I witnessed you refuse to die. 3 years after the peace treaty, the galaxy looked very different. Human and Vexari merchants traded freely. Joint military exercises between former enemies happened regularly. Cultural exchange programs brought young people from both civilizations together to learn about each other. The wounds of war were healing slowly but surely. Major Marcus Bennett had been promoted again. Now Colonel Bennett, he commanded an entire brigade, but he spent most of his time teaching at the military academy rather than in the field. His body had finally forced him to slow down. The synthetic organs worked well enough, but they required regular maintenance. The chest wound still ached on cold days. He would never be fully combat ready again, but his mind was sharp. His experience was invaluable, and his story had become legend. Every officer candidate in the human military knew about mining station Theta 7. They studied the battle and tactics class, analyzed the decisions Marcus made, and debated what they would have done in his place. The academy had even built a memorial, a statue of Marcus standing with a wound in his chest, rifle in hand, eyes focused on the horizon. The inscription read simply, "He refused to surrender, so did we." Students would walk past it every day, reminded that leadership meant sacrifice and duty meant everything. Diana Ortega had continued her rise through the ranks. Now a lieutenant colonel, she commanded her own battalion and had seen action in several peacekeeping operations. She visited Marcus often, bringing stories from the field and asking for advice. Their friendship had only grown stronger over the years. Kyle Hutchinson had become one of the most respected medical officers in the entire military. His book on combat medicine was in its 5th edition. He had saved countless lives using the techniques he developed after watching Marcus survive the impossible. Kyle ran the Academy's medical training program, ensuring every new medic understood that human patients should never be given up on. Takara had returned to Quell in space but maintained close contact with her human friends. She had become an ambassador of sorts, helping other alien species understand human culture and psychology. She gave lectures about her experiences serving alongside humans, always emphasizing that human ferocity in combat came from deep loyalty and protective instincts, not from savage nature. Lieutenant Commander Zaltith, now promoted to commander, had become one of the leading voices for continued peace between Vexari and humans. The officer visited Earth once, giving a speech at the military academy. Marcus attended and heard Zaltith tell the story of mining station Theta 7 from the Vexari perspective. That day changed everything for the Vexari collective, Zaltith told the assembled students. We thought we understood warfare. We thought combat was about superior tactics, better weapons, and larger numbers. Then we encountered Captain Bennett. He taught us that war is also about will, about determination, about refusing to accept defeat no matter what logic says. The Vexari had never encountered an enemy like that before. We had no tactical response for a soldier who simply would not die. After the speech, Zaltith and Marcus spoke privately. They had become something like friends over the years, united by their shared experience and mutual respect. Do you ever regret it? Zaltith asked. The pain you endured that day? The permanent damage to your body? Marcus considered the question carefully. Sometimes I wish I had been faster. Wish I had dodged that plasma bolt. But regret what I did after? No, I protected my people. I did my duty. That's all any soldier can ask for. You did more than duty, Zaltith insisted. You changed the course of history. The peace between our peoples exists because you showed us that humans cannot be defeated through conventional warfare. That revelation made peace not just desirable but necessary. I was just one soldier in one battle, Marcus said. Thousands of others fought just as hard. But you were the one who refused to die, Zaltith replied. That made all the difference. Marcus taught at the academy for 5 more years. He mentored hundreds of young officers, sharing his experience and wisdom. He taught them about tactics and strategy. But more importantly, he taught them about leadership, about taking care of your soldiers, about never asking them to do something you wouldn't do yourself, about standing when everyone else would fall. One day, a young cadet asked him the question everyone wanted to know. "Sir, how did you keep fighting with that wound? How did you survive when everyone says it was impossible?" Marcus had been asked this question hundreds of times. He usually gave diplomatic answers about adrenaline and training. But today he decided to be honest. "I don't really know," he admitted. "The pain was unbelievable. Every breath felt like fire. My vision kept going dark. My body was shutting down. By every medical standard, I should have been dead within minutes. But I had 200 civilians depending on me. I had 34 soldiers who needed their commander. So I just decided that death would have to wait. I had work to do first, Maris, but how do you decide that?" The cadet pressed. "How do you just choose not to die?" Marcus smiled. "You find something worth living for, something worth fighting for. For me, it was protecting my people. When you have a purpose that strong, your body finds a way. I'm not special. Any one of you could do the same thing if you had to. That's what it means to be human." Eventually, Marcus retired from active military service. He was 52 years old and had given the military 30 years of his life. It was enough. He returned to Earth, to a small house in the mountains where he could see the sunrise every morning. Diana visited him there once, bringing news from the military. "You're a legend now," she told him. "Every military academy in human space teaches about you. Some alien militaries do too. Zaltith wrote a book about the battle. It's required reading in the Vexari Officer Corps." "I just did my job," Marcus said, as he always did. "You saved 200 civilians," Diana corrected. "You won a battle while dying. You helped end a war. You showed the entire galaxy what humans are capable of. That's more than a job, Marcus. That's a legacy." Marcus watched the sunset from his porch that evening. He thought about that day on Krynos, about the pain and the fear and the determination. He thought about his soldiers, the ones who survived and the ones who didn't. He thought about all the people affected by the choices he made that day. The wound in his chest ached. It always ached, a permanent reminder of what happened. But Marcus didn't mind. The scar was proof that he had faced the impossible and survived. Proof that when it mattered most, he had stood his ground and protected his people. Years passed. The story of Captain Marcus Bennett became part of human culture. Children learned about him in school. Artists made paintings of the battle. Writers created stories inspired by his stand. The details sometimes got exaggerated, turned into myth and legend. But the core truth remained unchanged. A human soldier took a fatal wound and refused to die until his mission was complete. He commanded a successful defense for 4 hours while his body shut down. He survived against all medical possibility through pure determination. And in doing so, he proved to the entire galaxy that humans were unlike any other species. Other species admired humans. Some feared them, but all of them respected the fact that when pushed to the edge, when facing certain death, humans had a tendency to simply refuse to accept defeat. They would fight with broken bodies, shattered weapons, and impossible odds. They would stand when standing should be impossible, because humans came from Earth, a death world where only the stubborn survived. A planet that taught them to fight against nature, against predators, against death itself. And those lessons were written into human DNA, passed down through countless generations of ancestors who refused to quit. Marcus Bennett lived to be 73 years old. He died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by friends and family. His funeral was attended by thousands. Military officers from a dozen different species came to pay their respects. Diana gave the eulogy, telling stories about the man she had served beside for so many years. Marcus always said he was just doing his job, Diana told the crowd. But his job changed the galaxy. He showed us all what it means to lead, to sacrifice, and to never give up. He was my captain, my friend, and my hero. The galaxy is a better place because Marcus Bennett refused to die before his work was done. Commander Zalteth attended the funeral too. The Vexari officer stood before Marcus's grave and spoke words in both Vexari and English. "You were my enemy once. You became my teacher. You showed me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear control you. You showed me that strength is not measured in weapons or armor, but in the will to protect those who depend on you. Rest well, warrior. The peace you helped create will be your eternal monument." The story of Marcus Bennett lived on long after his death. New generations of soldiers learned about Mining Station Theta 7. They studied his tactics, analyzed his decisions, and tried to understand how one man could fight for 4 hours with a fatal wound. The answer was always the same. He was human. And humans don't quit. In military academies across the galaxy, instructors would tell their students about the Deathworlder who continued fighting after taking a fatal blow. They would explain how his refusal to die changed the course of a war, how his determination inspired an entire species, how his